My name's Kit Jagoda,
My name's Pete Jagoda.
and we are the founders of Rivers Wish Animal Sanctuary. We started this sanctuary in 1994. It wasn't really our plan, but we answered an ad in the paper looking for foster homes for dogs and cats from our local shelter, and it was the beginning of an eye-opening experience. I had no idea to the extreme of what the plight of animals was, to include dogs, cats, rabbits, the third most common animal at shelters, and then the plight of farmed animals. No idea. And I was just shocked and actually horrified that we aren't taught this, that the general public doesn't know what really goes on. And so it was an organic process growing this sanctuary for animals in need.
Yeah, and with each different species that came, it was a whole new learning experience. We did not grow up around farmed animals. And so there's an awful lot of learning that has happened, and there's still an awful lot of learning that needs to happen. But that's, I guess, part of the adventure, that there's always something new to learn.
Right. And we provide tours for people of all ages. We provide art and animal workshops. We're both artists and we're both art teachers. And it's an opportunity for people to meet animals whom they might have an abstract notion of a food animal. And they meet these individuals, and we hope that it opens their hearts and their minds to who these beings are, because it's definitely had an impact on ours. I know that during our tours, we often have people asking questions, and Peter gives wonderful tours. And one of the questions that they ask is, do animals have emotions?
And that's when I usually break into the story about Rudy and Eula. Rudy is a steer who was brought to us one evening by Scraps, the local animal control agency. He had been seized, and he was our first bovine resident. And we didn't know anything about cattle or bovines. We had no idea what his behavior was. He seemed to want to play, and we now know that it was play, but it seemed a little rough. We asked a vet friend of ours to come out and assess him, and he said, he walked up to Rudy, and Rudy looked at him, and you could tell he knew that Matt knew what he was doing, so Rudy didn't try to pull any of his usual stunts. And Matt said, this cow is tame. I let my kids play with him. But what you need is an older female cow who will just teach you some basic manners. So another vet friend of ours had this cow named Eula, and she was 18, and he said, I can bring Eula down and she can be with Rudy. So Eula came, took him about a week, and they both bonded. And when I say bonded, they were side by side everywhere you looked. Every time you looked out in the pasture, there they were together. We don't know how long farmed animals live a lot of times because they don't have the opportunity to live a full life. Eula was with us for a year and a half or 2 years, and she passed away. This is the story I tell to let people know who have questions about animals if they have strong feelings. He was beside himself. He would make the most pitiful sounds while he was standing by her. And one of the things I've had to learn how to do, and anyone who wants to do it, build a sanctuary or start a sanctuary, they better learn how to bury animals. And I've had to learn how to bury large animals. I prepared a place for Eula with a ramp that I could pull her into the grave gently. Rudy followed her down into the grave. And he cried. Like I do every time I tell the story. I couldn't keep my composure, so I got off the tractor and went down there with Rudy and stood by Eula in the grave. And then when Rudy walked out, I walked out and I finished burying her. He stood by the grave for a week or so, and obviously it was a palpable grief. Then a couple of weeks later, was it? Two steers came from a sanctuary in Montana, whose owner had passed on, and she wanted them to come here. And when Rudy saw those two steers come into the big area where he was, he literally bounced across. He was so happy.
Yeah, and the joy that Rudy had from that connection with Henry and Berg, I mean, it was beautiful, and it just still amazes us what we get the opportunity to witness, the emotions that animals share with one another. Another time we had our senior pig, Delilah, who was the matriarch, and when we had to say goodbye to her when the veterinarian came out, her entire pig family surrounded her and they covered her with hay that evening, and it was beautiful, and it's very spiritual living among the animals. It's very spiritual experiencing and witnessing what they experience with one another.
And what they know. I tell people also that, like horses and the cows, they can read your mind. They know what you're up to. And it's pretty amazing. And they can tell if you're nervous. They can tell if you're not sure of yourself. The horses, I can hide a halter and walk out amongst them to bring one in for a dental check. Somehow they know it's a dental check or whatever. They won't let me get close. To watch their intelligence at work is really an amazing thing.
Another thing that is so valuable for us to experience, and I think hopefully leads people to consider becoming vegan, is when they meet the animals and they hear their stories and they meet them as individuals, they see their personalities. I mean, we've had people out here who have never met a bovine, who have never met a turkey, and they're just amazed. And I love seeing that connection being made. We have a volunteer who had been vegetarian for many, many years. And a few years ago, we welcomed two little one-day-old calves who were going to be slaughtered. They were from the dairy industry, and they're just considered byproduct in the industry. And it's clicked for that volunteer and for many others to see that Bob and Moxie, these two little one-day-old helpless calves, they were going to be killed because their mother's milk was going to be used for humans when it should have been used for them. And so to see that these two little beings had such an impact on this person and many other people, I just hope that this can be communicated to others.
Yeah, their personalities are complex, and they're friendly, they're funny, they have a sense of humor. With Rudy, we also discovered, and this is not trying to anthropomorphize anything, but they have certain tastes, individual tastes in music. When we had our annual auction on site down at the Big Hay Barn, we would set up a flatbed trailer and we'd have various musicians come and perform. Normally, Rudy and the other cows didn't pay any attention. They would just be out munching on hay or something. But the time we had a blues singer come and he started to perform, Rudy stopped and walked over and hung his head over the fence, just feet behind the musician, and just listened. He was totally absorbed. So Rudy loves the blues.
Yeah.